Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. Was quite a second half that we saw there with the Illini putting together really the type of game that we had hoped to see. And this was a type of game I think that Illini fans were wanting to see the whole team together. We got that with obviously Ivisic coming back healthy now, and the team was 100% for the second half, and it seemed like they played with a sense of purpose. And the other thing that we saw was that the team actually came together a little bit under what looked to be Brad Underwood going as a flow of who was hot as opposed to a rotation pattern. I think that was good. And I think one of the things that I talked about on Twitter and on IlliniGuys.com back in the message boards is this team is a tough team. They don't give up, they do fight. And that personality clearly comes from the head coach. And it's probably him trying to recruit players who are more like that. And yeah, we will talk about the Lakers trade later on when Ked and Brad get on here because that's a fantastic subject. And as you look at the box score here, you had one of the things I got to take my hat off to the Ohio State team. They ended up shooting 47.8% from the three, which made this game a real challenge for the Illini. But I think in the end, we saw where the interior rebounding really pulled the Illini back into this game. You looked at a rebounding percentage of or a victory of 43-31. That was a big difference for those two teams, and that was important. And so that was a real key. And then the other thing that we saw here is you saw contributions from players stepped up and did stuff a little bit differently. But you saw Dre Gibbs Lahorn, he had several moments that were key, showed an aggressiveness of going towards the basket and making things happen. Ended up with 10 points in 23 minutes, largely due to foul trouble. Obviously, he's looking at 12 points, 10 boards. And look, folks, coming back from mono, he is probably going to be exhausted. He may sleep 15 hours tonight. But boy, you could see a difference, and he moves the ball, had some turnovers, especially early in the game. But once he got into the flow, I think that was less of a problem. Morez had a spectacular game coming on at really hitting hard, 14 points and 15 boards. Just had a tremendous one. And folks, he didn't get into foul trouble and he dunked. I think that was probably the main key is instead of hesitating, he just threw it down, and that is a big difference and much more challenging to deal with. Trey White ended up with no points, 0 for 2 shooting, probably a little bit less exciting of a day for him. Yakachonis, he was at 8 points, had 3 rebounds, 7 assists, had 4 turnovers, but only one of those turnovers was in the second half. And I think Brad Underwood went with, hey, let's get guys who are playing good. Let's keep them in there, maybe a little less minutes for Kasparis in the second half, but I don't know that was necessarily a bad thing. Rick House had 17 minutes, ended up with 5 points, 3 boards, and 1 assist. Had a couple of big plays, offensive rebound in the first half that led to a three. Cross court passed it over to KJ, who then hit Boswell for a three. Had some nice defensive plays and backed a guy down, a little booty ball. So a little bit less of a workload with him from a time standpoint. And I think that really made a difference. Boswell, he missed an easy layup and then made one of the harder ones we've seen him have to do. 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 1 for 3 from the three, and 3 for 3 from the free throw line. Had 2 rebounds and 2 turnovers. And of course, we had Will Riley with 24 points. He ended up 7 for 9 from the field, 1 for 1 from the three, 9 for 12 from the free throw line, had 3 boards, 1 assist, and 2 turnovers. So you're seeing with him, you saw him come alive in the second half. And I really think that was a game that he needed for a couple reasons. One is he didn't need the outside shot to start everything. He actually went aggressively towards the basket. Now, I'm not saying he's Terrence Shannon Jr., but that going towards the basket was critical. And Jake Davis was scoreless 0 for 1. And now we've got Kedric Prince jumping on here. And Kedric was a new team in the second half. I got to be honest with you. This is the Illini team that we all saw. I guess we haven't really seen them since before KJ got hurt.
Mike, I'm sorry to the listeners for being late. I have to go celebrate by myself. 2 big wins today. So I don't know what you've covered. So if I repeat myself, Mike said I'm really sorry, but just a great gutty performance today. I just have so many. I want to give props, number one, to the coaching staff. I have to give them credit because they made changes that a lot of people have been crying and complaining about. Whether they listen to us or not, don't know. We've talked about wanting to see Merez and the Beaches play together. He did it. I wanted to see Drayvon Gibbs-Longhorn get more minutes, and he got it. I want to see Will Riley get more minutes today with a different team and a different game situation, and they got it. And probably the most important thing, when you want to talk about making adjustments, I haven't looked at the stat sheet, but I'm going to pull it up as we do this podcast. They did what I said last time. Quit jacking on threes and attack the basket. And they did. And they won the game. And that was my complaint. Whatever it takes to do to win the game, that's what you do. And today they did it. And I will say this in closing. There are 3 teams in the Big Ten tournament that, as a reporter, analyst, I do not want to play. Maryland, Ohio State, and USC. I think those are the 3 most underrated, dangerous teams in the conference. I wouldn't want to play either one of those teams in the tournament because they're good enough to beat anybody from 1 through 18.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And we saw Royal, we were big on last year, and Brad and I had several conversations on like why are they playing him more, and we're seeing this year that you wonder what could have been last year if he'd actually got a little bit more playing time. A couple things, Kat, I'm going to say some stuff that probably shouldn't be said. That's my job.
Let's roll with it, baby.
It almost seemed like Brad Underwood decided, I don't care what NIL dollars are out there. I don't care what players and parents and people around the program think the playing time should be. I'm going to look at who's playing on the field and damn the analytic, or on the court, and damn the analytics. If somebody's playing good, I'm going to keep them in the dang game.
Let me respond. I can't wait to respond to that. Mike, exactly. Brad Underwood, I want to tip my hat, but I don't want to show my bald head. That's exactly what happened. We're not going to play the political game here. Not today. Because a lot of people felt, and then some people will say it publicly, and there's a lot of media people, so don't hide and pretend that you haven't said it. And not just at Illini, guys. A lot of media, local and nationally, thought, why in the hell is Drayvon Gibbs-Longhorn sitting on the bench? Why in the hell is Merez not playing more than what he should have been playing? Why? It's okay to sit KJ because he wasn't playing great. Brad Underwood did today, and I'm extremely proud, whether it was him, Tyler, Orlando, Jeff Alexander, whoever made that decision. I could care less. They did what they should have done because, like I said the last podcast, if you want to get someone's attention, the best way to do it is to sit their ass on the pine and make them reflect on it. And they did that today because what you saw today was Drayvon Gibbs-Longhorn get a start, who had a monster dunk. He gave them 10 points today. I tell you, who really stepped up was Kylan Boswell. He was a guy that lost his starting spot, and he didn't play. And you know what? He had 14 points today. I don't think he shot bad shots today. I was okay with his shooting today with what he did. Drayvon Gibbs-Longhorn got 23 minutes, and Brad Sturdy, our colleague, has been saying, give this guy 25, 30 minutes a game. And I put on my Twitter feed right now, and I don't know if you've seen it, Mike, because I know we're on air. Me personally, MVP was Morris Johnson, but the player of the game was Thomas Harvey-Bicic, because I have been saying that dude is a difference maker. He put up a double after his first game back. He makes the difference in tip rebounds, getting loose balls, makes free throws, and he passes like a guard. That is what we have been missing. And if he would have played in Nebraska, they would have won. And I'm sorry, people don't want to admit it, but when you this next man up philosophy, yeah, that's great. But the next man is probably may not be as good as the guy you have out there. Yes, it's an opportunity for someone to play, but that guy is as important piece of this team as anybody on that roster.
I'll tell you, Ked, I got into it with a national guy who's like, "Oh, did Michigan State break Illinois?" And
Did
you're
Ohio State,
national
man?
guys, so
Don't listen to them,
you
man.
don't
Like,
have to know you don't have to know anything. You just write generalities. But look, I said, what team could handle their best two players not playing for 2.5, 3 weeks? You had KJ, who was out for a few games. Then Ivisic was out for a few games. Now they're and KJ, I would argue, still isn't back from that injury. Whatever he did to that left forearm, he hasn't really gotten his groove back. But now the whole team is there. And I think what I thought, Ked, was the biggest thing of this game, aside from Morez, I guess I'll give two of them. Morez first playing like Kofi. And then the second thing is that we saw Will Riley decide he was going to score, and it wasn't going to be from shooting from 30 feet from the basket. It was going to be attacking the basket, which put all sorts of pressure on that Ohio State defense.
Mike, it did that, but and I want to go to that. Whoever the national media guy was that asked if Michigan State broke Illinois, let me ask you, if Cooper Flag wasn't playing for Duke, do you think they'd be the same team? Hell no. Your better players, they matter. You just can't take guys off of a roster and say, okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. And it's okay if they're sitting and they're not going to play. It doesn't work that way. So to me, those are guys who are just looking for clicks. And they're national guys. Some national guys do a good job of covering. But for the most part, they don't do the homework. And I'm going to tell you why they don't do the damn homework. Every game you hear the same speech. You see Will Riley on the court. Oh, it's the most highly rated recruit since D. Brown. How many times have we heard that? You know where they got the information from? The sports information directors, or they follow guys like us. That's where they get it from. So if you're going to do your work, do the work and not just make blanket statements, because you could take Michigan State. You take Carr off Michigan State. You take Fears off Michigan State. Are they the same team? No. You look at women's basketball. You take Juju Watkins off USC. Are they the same team? That's a stupid comment. Right now, I will go back to. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm fired up a
No,
little
that's
bit.
fine. That's fine, Ked. I want to get you riled up.
Okay, don't take me long to get that going, baby. But anyway, how about Morez? Like Mr. Morez Sr., I know you're listening to us, and I'm gonna tell you, if you can find two bigger fans that cover the University of Illinois athletics, since your son was an athlete, more than Mike Cagley and Kedric Prince, I want to see them, because from the day he was down there in Washington, we were down there and we have been telling Illinois fans the upside. And I forget his teammate was the Brown kid.
Oh yeah, it was James Brown. Remember, everybody's like James Brown, and we kept saying James Brown's a nice player, but Morez is the real deal.
The man. And I tell you what, his dunks, right, they remind me of Kofi, and he's getting better and better. And I'll tell you what, man, Illinois is very lucky to keep that kid. They better do whatever they can to keep these kids, because NIL money is going to be flying everywhere, not just with Illinois kids, but all over the place. And I'm going to tell you, Illinois fans, or whatever it's going to take, or whoever does the NIL program, you got to keep guys like that in your program. He can play with anybody, and it looks like he played the post, and now with Ivisic coming back, he's able to get out on the perimeter, and he's a better player just because of Ivisic. I'm all over the place, man. I'm fired up, Michael.
Look, and there's one thing that I have not heard anybody talk about in the second half, and this is what to me makes the difference, is in the second half, Ohio State shot 30% from the field, 30.6. And that lowered them down to that put them down to under 40 for the game. And I'm telling you, the way they were shooting early on, it was devastating. And Illinois locked down the defense. And at the same time, they were playing better on offense. And so that gives you a little bit of an idea of what was going on with Illinois. People forget about that defensive end of the floor, but it was a heck of a defensive effort. And when Ohio State struggled to score, then Illinois was able to come back. And I think that defense is sometimes underestimated by folks. You muted yourself, kid.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. I have to give Ohio State credit. They are a really good basketball team. Mike, they made some tough shots.
Yep.
They got the right guy running the team. When you go on, they've won 3 games in a row, and they went to Purdue and won, I believe. That team is mentally tough. That's why I said to you, it's a team that I really wouldn't want to play in the Big Ten tournament on a neutral site, because those are teams that just have athleticism, and they have guys that can just make shots and make threes and timely, and they rebound. And I believe, look here, I think this was the first time, I don't know how many games Illinois didn't win the offensive rebounding battle, because Ohio State does a tremendous job. They did a good job of keeping the ball alive today. They came in with the attitude to win. And one of the things I said before as well is that Illinois needs to get that hunger back to where teams fear coming into the State Farm Center, because they've lost a couple games because they've been missing some players. But all credit to Ohio State. And to be honest with you, I hope they get in the tournament. I hope they can find a way to get in the tournament. They're going to be a tough out for somebody. They have good guard play. They have good shooters. I like what they do. They went to a zone once, which I talked about, Mike. That's what I would do to Illinois. And as soon as they did it, Will Riley knocked down a 3. That's the best way to get teams out of it. If they're going to zone you, you make them pay. And so that's another guy we haven't talked about too. He's starting to come along. He hit that freshman wall. Now, if they can get them to all click, and if they can somehow eliminate maybe just 3 of KJ's turnovers, get him to knock down a couple more shots, this is going to be the team that everybody thought. And Avicic, hopefully he's going to be healthy. Rest, big fella, because I think you're the most important part of this team, man.
Yeah, Ivicic, he's going to sleep very well tonight coming off of mono. We know that, and it's going to be one of those moments you want to get him all the rest. And
Mike, can I say something? Sorry
Yep.
to cut you off. Now, this is a subliminal message to the people on our message board, if you subscribe to it or not, or even on Twitter. Brad Underwood, we had hints. I had a hint that lineup was probably going to change and the Avicic were going to play. So for the people out there who want to question my knowledge, I just heard Brad Underwood say about 20 minutes ago, when they found out he was playing yesterday, Brad Underwood talked about how excited he was yesterday, not today, yesterday. So they knew it then. Kedric knew it then. So it's not like, the one thing you're never going to get from me is a lie and false information. I won't do that. Now, people can lie to me, but Underwood made the comment to everybody listening that he was excited because he knew the big fella was going to play yesterday. And we did have that in Illini, guys. So that's one of the reasons you want to subscribe to our site. Other people can nitpick it, but we did know that. And we also knew the lineup was going to change. Sorry to cut you off, Chief.
Nope. That's the key thing. I do think it was really good for them, because if you're, I'm not saying any of these players feel that way, but if you're Kylan Boswell, Rick House, and you're not starting, well, their solution is go out and play. And I thought Rickhouse played under control. He played well for the time he was out there. And I thought Boswell played his best game in a couple weeks. So
he didn't force anything finally, Mike. He did not force. He played the way we thought. Yes, I'm sorry, but yes, that's exactly what he did.
And I think that's critical. There's 2 ways you can handle getting benched. You can sit there and cry in a corner and feel sorry for yourself, or you can say, okay, what did coach tell me I was doing, and what can I do differently? And it seems like the Illinois players have taken the approach that, okay, I'm going to pay attention to what coach is saying, because the best way for a coach to motivate people is the wood that represents the bench, and you can sit on it. And if you want to do it your way, I always told kids, if we're going to lose a game, we're going to lose it the way I want to lose it, not the way you do. So I think Kylan seemed like he was under much better control today. So this is a win-win for the Illini program and for him as a player, despite the fact maybe he didn't start today.
That had a lot to do with it because he was under control. Yes, he missed the layup. The thing that I like today, probably more than anything with him, he didn't just shoot a lot of bad shots. And some of his shot selection to me, it has been bad. I'm going to call it spade. Today, it all came from within the framework of the offense. And you look at him, I mean, when you get a Visage out there, Marez Johnson mentioned this, in the post game, that by having a Visage out there, everybody's better because they have to honor his 3-point shooting. You have to guard that. He knocked one down today, and once he gets his legs back, how good of a 3-point shooter he is. I mentioned it before. He's percentage-wise, he's the second best 3-point shooter percentage-wise on the team. So you have to guard that. But Kylan Boswell got easy layups. Will Riley got layups. He got a dunk off some of Ibisa's passes. This is why he's such an important piece of the team. He is the glue to that whole piece out there. So everybody looks better with him. And even there was a couple times KJ went to the basket. And I know I thought about you when he went to the basket once and the guy grabbed his arm and called a foul. But when they get him at the high post and they spread the floor, you better have some help defense because the pieces he'll carve you apart.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. Now, one quick point, Ked, that I know you were paying a lot of attention with split screen TVs and stuff. You might want to give people a quick update on what the Illini women today, because they had a first in all time for the Illini women as well.
I do a lot of coverage to the Illinois women's basketball program, and a lot of it is because my daughter played Division II basketball, so I've always been invested in. I ran my own men's and women's AAU program, and I'm going to tell you, Shauna Green is from the Quad City area, from where I live at, and I remember I watched the game this week, and I forget who the play-by-play announcer was, but they made a comment that when Shauna Green took their job, when she was interested in the job, they told her she was crazy, and they were, what the hell are you doing? That job is, you don't want that job. That's a death sentence. This woman has turned this program around in 3 years, and every year, she's just doing something different. Today was the first time in Illinois history where they beat Maryland today. They went on the road, and she's doing it with 6 or 7 players. They have a 6'7" center, Lady Vasconis, who is a transfer, tore ACL sitting out. You have arguably one of your best athletic wings, and Gretchen Dolan, who's sitting out. Your all Big Ten performer, possible player of the year candidate, Micaiah Cook, is out for the year. And she's just continuing to win. And it's just amazing to me because right now they beat Florida State, which is a ranked win. They beat Indiana. They beat Iowa. They're really playing really well, and she is an amazing coach. And if you worry about recruiting, get online. They have the 7th best recruiting class in the country, according to ESPN. They are only top 10 team in the Big Ten, and women's basketball recruiting rankings come from Shauna Green and her coaching staff, Beasley, Smith, Calamity. They've all done a remarkable job. And we don't have enough time to talk about what Brett Beadham was doing because he's got the country on notice right now himself. Huge win for Shauna Green in the women's program. I know that she's talked about people out there getting out there and support them. You need to do it because it could be the other way around. It was an easy cakewalk to beat the women. Now it's not. They got a 5-star in Barry Wallace from Ohio, Pickerton, Ohio. Shauna's running plays for this girl, and this girl's making shots, and she's growing up right before our eyes. And I'll say this is probably going to be the only negative thing I have on this whole podcast. Shauna is an excellent X's and O's coach. And if anybody wants to learn how to break a press, hint, go see her because she is really good at it. You don't want to sideline out of bounds as far as getting balls in bounds. So I'm just saying she's really good at it, and it's not the same thing. She has a plethora of different plays to get the ball in bounds, and I would really urge people, if you're looking at X's and O's, she's a good person to follow.
Yeah, totally agree. And I wanted to give a little bit of love out to the women's team. And of course, folks, for you guys who are obviously thinking about this, Illinois plays Wednesday night, 7:30 on BTN. They're at Rutgers, and we will do our halftime live, and we will do a post game immediately after the game. So that should be a ton of fun. A couple questions that people had, Ked, that I wanted to say now. We have Morez the superstar. He said a month ago. You and I were years ahead of this, but I'm not certain I would say a young Joel Embiid because Joel is a massive human being. And while Morez is a big guy, Joel is a aircraft carrier. I sometimes when Morez is out there playing, he reminds me a little bit of Derek Coleman. He just does that relentless rebounding, Ben Wallace, that type of thing. And Morez doesn't take any prisoners. He's that guy at practice that when you're supposed to just be doing a walkthrough is playing you 100%. And you're like, get off of me, man. That's Morez. Any thoughts on that, kid?
I remember going to the beginning of the season, I had a chance to talk to Coach Underwood and some of the coaches before the season started. Here's what the three things that they said to me. KJ is an NBA player. Visage is probably the best three-point shooter on the team. And then they said that if somebody can find a way, if you want to win scrimmages, you have to have Morez on your team because every rebound he goes up and he gets it. And that's exactly what we're seeing. He is a star. He's growing up right before our eyes. I'm happy because I see some enthusiasm from him. That's not what he does, and he's not like that. He's happy. Just hearing his post-game interview today was great. It's hard when you're coming out of high school or transfer, when you're used to being the man, it is hard because once you get to college, whether it's football, basketball, golf, everybody's good. So Morez waited his time, and I knew how good he was, but I'm not going to pretend that I think what he's doing right now, I didn't think would happen, Mike. I just didn't. He's getting better and better. People aren't stripping the ball from him as much. He's able to spin around and move to avoid contact. Kudos to Orlando. I said from the very beginning, Orlando is a hell of a big man's coach. When Kofi first came in, all he could do was just flex his muscle like the Hulk, red or green, and dunk over people. Now he was able to go left hook. You're going to see Morez. If he stays at the University of Illinois, which I hope he does, you're going to see his game develop and change to something you've never seen before because he's a lot more mobile than Kofi, I think, and he runs a little bit better than Kofi. You're right. He's growing up right before our eyes, and he's even improved his free throw shooting. Before the season started, he walked up there, you knew it was 0 for 2. Now there's a chance it's 1 for 2 or 2 for 2. So just growth overall. Great comment, Mike.
This is the Run My Own Business dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
Yeah, and I know Randy brought up, and this is something that I think people will probably appreciate if you are an Illinois native. But when they play next week, you will have a lot of fun with Lathan Somerville, who had some classic matchups with Morez in high school. And Lathan is probably a little heavier than Morez, but is a very intense competitor as well. So it's cool to see this type of rivalry go on into the college level as well. And I think that should be a ton of fun. Obviously, won't be the main story going through that Rutgers game, but you can't tell me that both of those young players won't be excited about playing against one another.
The main story is going to be the 3 lottery picks. That's number one. From Ace to forget the other kids. I don't know why I forget the other guards from Harper. I don't know why I forget Harper because his dad played for the Bulls and KJ. But I'm going to tell you this. So, Randy, I'm glad you put that out there for us because what people may not understand and realize, there was a game last year where Rich was ended Morez's senior year, and Somerville went publicly and said, I'm the best player in the state. And that didn't sit well. Now, Morez was in foul trouble the first half of that high school game. I've been thinking about this game for a long time. I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to draw attention to it because Somerville did outplay Morez. But I can assure you, when they play this week, Morez is going to have a chip on his shoulder. I know the coaches are going to know about it because Lathan just said it. I'm the best player. And he is a good player. But I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out this week. We know Rutgers is not having a great season, but that doesn't mean anything in the Big Ten. But I'm glad, Randy, you caught that because in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about that because for someone to call you out, and if you're any kind of competitor, I know that's going to be in the back of Morez's mind. I may hit his dad up this week to see what his thoughts are on it and put those comments on our IlliniGuys message boards.
Yeah, I think that's the key. One of the things that I think we also saw today is, and we talk about this off and on, but I really think I go back and look at this game. Will Riley finding ways to score that don't involve a 30-foot shot that is taken early in the shot clock. I thought he played within himself today. And even the one layup that he missed, yeah, I think he got caught underneath. But I think had he pivoted a little harder, he would have probably got a 2-shot foul. Instead, he just threw it up and didn't work out. But I really thought his shot selection was much better today. And if you take a look at this 87 points, I thought a lot of this team was some of the chucks that we have seen in the last few weeks. They didn't chuck. And so I thought the shot selection was much better today.
It was, and I said that it was better. They didn't just come down, chuck up shots for the heck of it. And I mentioned, I should have put Will Riley on my tweet for this podcast. He was solid today, and I'm just going to say it. Me personally, right now, he would eat up a lot of Ben Humrichhausen's minutes. He would. He is more productive right now. He's no longer a freshman. He has played enough games right now to where he is really considered to be a sophomore. In my personal opinion, let's think about it. He had 31 points as a season opener. He had 24 points and 7 of 9 shooting today, and he was 9 of 12 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds. Okay, now we're just looking at statistics here. Ben Humrichhaus, 5 points, 3 rebounds. But Humrichhaus. Yes. Having said that, 2 for 4. He had 3 rebounds. I'm going to give those minutes up. And Will Riley got him. Ben didn't get a lot of minutes. And that's not to say he's bad, but if he's not playing well right now, you replace him. But on the flip side of it, you got to be a player's coach, and that's what Underwood is. You don't want to give up on your guys. But if they're not playing well, it's about winning. Can you imagine if they would have lost today at home? And I tell you, the way Ohio State came out, it didn't look good because I knew they came out with this was an opportunity to get a quad 1 win. And having said that, man, I'm happy that they're all getting back and they get healthy. I want to see them when they play Duke. That's another opportunity for them to beat another high-quality opponent, but they have to be healthy. That's the number one thing. And I know that's coaches speak, but it's not overrated.
No, that's critical. And again, we've talked about that, the way the national press doesn't always notice that. Probably the only person who probably didn't play as well as we thought was Trey White. I expected him, Ked, to do a lot better with Ivisic out there being able to spread the floor for him and give him cutting lanes to the basket. And I was surprised that he had such a nondescript game today. Any thoughts on that?
I do. I'm not going to read much into that because you know why? Everyone else picked up the slack. Because the role that he took, where he's usually slashing off Visa's passes, I think today, Will Riley took some of that today. I think Draymond, took some of that. And I even think kind of Oswald did. So, yeah, individually it may look bad, but just as far as the team, it doesn't matter who's doing it. It just looks better. And with this offense not chucking up shots, they had 5 guys in double figures. Gib Longhorn with 10, Visas with 12, Morez with 14, and you had Colin with 14, and Riley with 24. When you're out there, you really want to be effective when you're out there. And so that's, I think right now, and then I like the fact that when Brad changed his lineup, and that's my favorite lineup, to be honest with you, there's a reason he went with Trey White. Trey White is a great rebounder. He didn't rebound well today, but when they played against Nebraska, he had 10, 11, or 12 rebounds. So one game to me doesn't mean that you should bench a guy, but we've seen enough body of work of all these players right now to say, hey, it's okay to make these changes, because I think the guys that he inserted today, I was totally okay with. And if there was another change to be made, and I'm cool with what's going on, if you're going to change another guy, that Will Riley trade would be with Trey White. But right now, that's working. And, Will Riley got 29 minutes today. That tied for the third most on the team today.
And 29 minutes, and you score 24 points. There is a lot of precedent in basketball history for that guy who comes off the bench and is like an adrenaline shot for a team. And I think Will Riley tonight reminded me a little bit of Vinnie Johnson from back in the old Pistons game, or even a little bit of a young Andrew Toney when he would come out and and just go absolutely crazy for the 76ers. I don't know about you, but there's definitely there's a precedence for maybe not starting him.
There is, and that's okay. You're throwing a bunch of names around, man. I remember all those guys back in the day. Some of these listeners are probably thinking, who in the hell is Mike talking about? But I remember those guys. But it's okay, though. And if he's going to be that productive, and the way that I know he's an NBA prospect, and that's what people are thinking, and that's great. They don't care about that. They look at those numbers today and what he's doing. That's at the end of the day, that's what they care about, because he's not started all season. They could have easily gone with him today, and they didn't. But if you're a player of any kind of magnitude, you should be happy. I'll give you another good example. Going back to the women's program, Barry Wallace is a McDonald's All-American on that team. And probably, in my opinion, she should be starting. But she doesn't start, but I think she gets the third or fourth most minutes on the team, and she doesn't start. So sometimes starting can be overrated, because Shauna Green is running plays for this girl. She's effective at what she's doing. So having said that, man, at the end of the day, starting is nice. It looks good because you hear your name being called out there with everybody else, and you get to go through the starting ceremony. But Will Riley hasn't started all season. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't surprise me if they did do it. It's not because Brad is afraid to do it, because he's proven right now that he has no problem making a roster change. And I think he saw the writing on the wall. I think the biggest reason was turnovers. And then you had guys out there like Draven, who was just a assassin out there who brings energy to the team. So I'm all for changes. And like you mentioned earlier, if you don't like the fact that you're sitting, then you go do something about it. It's like a job.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your job, you better go fight for it, because otherwise you're all replaceable.
Yep, I totally agree. Here, for people are asking a little bit, so I'm going to throw this out there verbally. They're asking for the plus minus. Now, again, folks, this is just one stat. There's a lot of stats people can use for a game, and let's just be real honest here. If I was out on the court, I would screw up the other four guys plus minus because I'm out there. But let's just look at this. Draven was at plus 16. Ivasic was at 8. Morez was at 4. Trey White was negative 22. Yakuchonis was negative 11. Rickhouse was plus 8. Boswell was plus 15. Will Riley plus 25. And Jake Davis was minus 3. So again, that's not a definitive stat. I know people love that stat. It's somewhat, it can be, there's more than just, again, it's not, you have to look at many factors when you're looking. You don't want to look analytics at one stat and make your decision, but there's a little bit of what Illinois did. And what I really enjoy about them today is Illinois was 6 for 6 on dunks, and Ohio State was 1 for 1. And I just think there was a different mentality when they got the ball on the inside today. Morez played with a sense of urgency. You had Will Riley going to the basket hard and making things happen. Ivasic is probably the best passer on the team, and he's got the ball on the inside. So I thought it was a big difference, a big thing to the way they were playing on the inside today.
Mike, they were just the way they played and the way they made adjustments to what Ohio State was trying to do. And I was just here for it. I liked the adjustments with them, and they did. And the other thing, you're right. You mentioned about the layups and the dunks. Those are just freebies. And the other thing was just the missed free throws down the stretch. I know that kind of concerned some people down the stretch. I mean, they finished the game. They were 23 of 31, and KJ was very uncharacteristic from the free throw line. He was 4 of 80. I believe he's an 89% free throw shooter or something like that. Some days that's going to happen. I'm just not, you don't want to see it happen in the game where it really matters. I'm not going to harp on some of the little things because it's not what it is. They were 4 for 20 from 3 today. I will admit that, which is 20%. And Ohio State was 11 of 23 and 48%. So you got to be able to somehow figure out, like they did today, shots weren't falling, but those shots are eventually going to fall. I'm just not panicking, and they'll eventually start to fall. I believe Ivasic was 1 for 5, and KJ was 0 for 5 today, and that's part of it. So they'll be okay. Because KJ is a good 3-point shooter and so is the Vicious. I'm not worried about those guys.
Yeah. Now, Randy has asked for us to explain the plus minus. So that basically is when you come into the game as a player, and let's say it's 0-0, the opening tip, and you're in the game, and you're in for 3 minutes, and when you come out of the game, your team's up 15-5. You would be plus 10 for that time in the game, and that stat is kept for what the score is when you get in, what the gap is when you get in versus when you leave, and then over the course of the game, you add up that, and it just gives you an idea of how successful the team was when you were on the floor. Now, there's a lot of factors swirling around that. My plus minus would be fantastic if you put me next to LeBron James and Steph Curry and Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. So I would look like my plus minus is pretty good. So it's not a pure one, but it is an important stat overall. It's just another thing to focus on when we're looking at that. Now, I also saw, here's an interesting one, Ked. So this is good to hear. Walking with the wife and walked by somebody else who was listening to the post game. That's nice to know. We do our best trying to get on here after the game and give you some insight as guys who've formerly coached, and Ked's covered the team for over 20 years. I've covered it for 4. We try to give you some insight. We'll have Sturdy coming on when he gets out of the locker room area, and he will join us via the radio. But anytime that you can see another person who's listening to it, give them a high five, and of course share it with all your friends. Make sure you hit the like button and use your social media to help support us. We really appreciate that. And then, Ked, I think the other thing, we'll save one of these questions for Brad, because we're going to talk about the trade last night that to be honest, has stupefied people across the country with Luka being traded for Davis. I living down here in Dallas, the Mavs fans are literally depressed, totally like, what the heck happened to us? And then there's another one I thought was good. I don't know. Morez equals Moses Malone. That's a great one. Although people forget, I think Moses Malone is one of the most underrated professional basketball players of all time. Because when I grew up, that guy was averaging, I don't know, 28 and 18 or something like that, and he was like clockwork. Ked, that's a very high compliment, and if Morez becomes Moses Malone too, that will be a very lucrative lifetime for Morez in the NBA.
How about Chocolate Thunder? You remember him? Mr.
Daryl Dawkins.
Yeah, it could be Daryl Dawkins. It's good. This is really good for Morez. I'll tell you what, if I'm Morez and get a good PR guy being from the state of Illinois, I tell you what, he needs somebody to help him, because he can make a lot of money being an Illinois kid right now with his performance. But again, what's nice, we've had a number of people talk about Morez, and I'm really happy to see that. I am, just because here's a kid that deserves it. And Deion Thomas just talked to him about 20 minutes ago. He committed, and so did Brian Barnhart. He could have left. He could have left and say, hey, I'm backing out. That happens in football recruiting all the time. And so I kudos to this kid, and the fans love him. And if there was anybody on this roster where I can't tell you how many texts I've received and phone calls, play Morez more. This kid has done it, and he's proven people. I saw it, but not. I didn't think it would be this. I just did. He's really impressing me with how much better he's getting game by game.
Ked, we could have called ourselves the Eye on the Illini / Play Morez More podcast for a while there, so I feel good about that. Now I wonder, people talk about, and it was definitely a play that was noted on Twitter a lot, basically that dunk by DGL. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I know that you obviously are really close to all the players. Your eyebrows had to be raised.
I'm excited for this kid, because here's why. And St. Dominic Rosary, I'm glad you mentioned DGL, because this kid could have left. He is the only kid off last year's roster. I sound like a national guy right now because I'm telling you something that you already know. but he could have left. He is the most athletic kid on the team. If he's 6'1", I'm 6'10". He can get up above the rim. He can dunk over people, and he is so confident. The thing that I've learned, and more I talk to him about his family, Draymond has played against some of the best competition in all of high school and college basketball. He's never afraid of the moment. You can't tell me a game. Even last year in the NCAA tournament, Coach Underwood saw something in him because he started playing him once the Big Ten, the last few games of the season, the Big Ten tournament started, he put him in the game. He's just a guy that is not going, he will never back down from taking anybody off the dribble, whether the player is 5'5" or 6'8". He's confident. He can shoot the ball. He handles it well. He's a good free throw shooter. I'm just a big fan of his because he can do things on the court that no one else can do. He's the one guy that can literally create. I mean, by get to the basket, whether it be between the legs, behind the back, spin dribble. No one else on the team can do that. The only guy close to it, kind of, maybe Trey White a little bit, but the ball sits in his hand a little bit too long for me. I'm a big DJL fan, and I've been saying it all year. And that's why when I found out that he was in the starting lineup, I tipped my hat to the coaching staff and to that kid, because most people today would pout, and he doesn't. And I know he's frustrated. The kids are never going to say, oh, that's okay, I want to sit. No, they don't. He wants to be on that court just like everybody else. And I know Kylan Boswell is a competitor. If you think he's going to roll over and play dead, you're kidding yourself, because he's not either. And that makes a healthy roster. I'm a big fan of his. And again, when I got on this podcast, the first thing I said was kudos to the coaches, because I'm really happy and proud that they made the change, because it takes Coach Underwood a long time to change his lineups, and it may go back to be the same when they play Rutgers. Hopefully it won't, but whatever it takes to win, if it changes it and they win, it doesn't matter. They've had enough bad losses. Right now they need to get a couple more good wins and to get this thing rolling and to keep them in the top 25 where they belong. They're not going to probably win the Big Ten, but I don't care, but they can win the Big Ten tournament, get a better seed. Try to get on that 3 and 4 line and stay off that 5 or 6.
Yep. So one last thing, folks. It looks like Brad may not be able to make it today, running into some post-game complications. But we may try to see if we can do something later on. But for now, let's do one thing. Ked is not an NBA guy by any stretch of the imagination. I'll throw out my opinion of the Anthony Davis for Luka trade. I think it's amazing to me that somehow the Lakers have figured out how to get their next generation started, because Luka's not even 26 yet. Trading for Anthony Davis, who's 33. And we jokingly at my house call him Mr. Glass because he can get injured frequently. Luka will be working with LeBron James for at least a year or two. At least it looks that way. And LeBron's workout regimen is incredible. It might be something that saves Luka or adds to his career. But I do think maybe this year and next year, I keep thinking there's another shoe to fall, that maybe the Mavs are going to try to move somebody and maybe grab a Jimmy Butler or something like that. They'd have to have probably a 3-way trade to do it. But I keep thinking they're trying to put together a run where you might have Kyrie and Jimmy and Anthony Davis. And now you're like, okay, I understand why they did that. I think in the long run, and even possibly depending on injuries in the short run, I think Luka will be a bigger deal. It'll be a benefit because I don't think they got enough for him. When you see Mikal Brooks getting 4 or 5 first-round picks when he goes to a team, and Luka you get Anthony Davis, but just one additional pick, I thought it would have been a team like Oklahoma City, which could have given a couple players and a boatload of draft picks for him. So I was surprised that the Mavs didn't get more. Ked, did you have any thoughts on that trade?
I'll be really quick. I want people to know, years ago, every team in the NBA, I knew every single player. I was that invested in the NBA. But because it's such a political drama game, I just don't have the interest in it anymore. It's tarnished my love for it. One of the reasons is I will use the way they go about drafting players. I'm going to use Terrence Shannon. Arguably, Terrence Shannon could be on Detroit, could be in Chicago, could be in New York, and he would play. He's sitting on the bench writing to me at 23 years old. Why'd you draft the kid? And it's all this political BS I'm not a fan of. Terrence Shannon, they put him down, they bring him down, he goes to the G League, scores 75 points, and then he puts up 88, then he goes back and sits on the bench. But because a player makes more money, they have to play them. I don't want to see that shit. That's why I don't watch it. So I feel bad about it. I'm not a fan of it. That's just the political part, and I don't like that. We have enough of that crap going on in the world today for me to let that ruin sports. So I feel bad. I know who the players are. You know what? To be honest with you, my son is the same age as Anthony Davis. I went to a basketball tournament and played on the team with him when they were the same size, but my son ended up being 6'6", and Anthony kept growing. So I know who he is. And he's a good guy, and I know the Luka trade. I know when Neat texted that to us last night, a lot of people were surprised by it, but nothing surprised me with the NBA anymore. It just doesn't. And I think if anybody was mad, I know the Dallas people were probably more upset about it than anything. That's just a little bit that I read about it, but I was a huge NBA guy. Again, I could name every player on every roster. That's how invested I was in it. But now it's players get traded every week, and if you run and you touch the rim and you break a toenail, you're out for a month. It's just not what it used to be for me anymore. Sorry. I'm just not. I would much rather. I'm a basketball guy. If I had a chance to watch the NBA Finals and a regular season NFL football game, Kedric is watching an NFL football game, and that's not a lie.
To me, it's hard to beat the NFL, but I think it's I think it's very interesting to see. Like I said, the Lakers, when they got rid of, Wilt Chamberlain, and at the end of the West era, they get Kareem, and then as Kareem gets older, they get Magic, and then they had a little bit of a dead space, but you get Kobe, you bring in Shaq, and then Paul Gasol extends that a little bit. And then you bring in LeBron, and then now you've got Luka. It's amazing how they're able to stay relevant, and they don't necessarily do it the way a lot of other teams did by drafting a guy, but they get them to come because it's LA and the entertainment industry and Hollywood and Malibu and all those things. But anyway, it's an interesting one, and the way it's being portrayed right now is that the Mavericks ownership or their GM thought there was something going, thought that he wanted to move on getting rid of Luka, and it sounds like right now the narrative is that Luka always arguing and screaming at the refs and not keeping himself in shape and coming in heavy. Maybe they decided they needed to make a move. I would have called a heck of a lot of teams because I think you could have got a lot more than what you got. But the interesting thing is when Nico, their GM, signed Kyrie, I said, that's going to end up bad. And so far, it's been fine. So maybe he knows something that we all don't. But man, I got to see a little more of this play out before I trade a. Typically, you look at an NBA player as being in their prime from, 27 to 32, 33. And Luka's not, he's still 25, and you're getting a 32-year-old Anthony Davis with a creaky body. I don't know, just on that alone that I wouldn't have made that. And then the draft choice being 4 years out, I thought they could have got, 3 or 4 picks every other year, get a first rounder. So I was a little bit surprising of that. Now the trade deadline's not over. I believe it's Thursday, I think. So there's plenty of time. There may be another shoe to fall. And I was even reading people wistfully saying that this could make LeBron go to Golden State, which I just figure LeBron, I'm not certain how LeBron and Luka will handle it since they both like to have the ball most of the time. But I got to think LeBron probably stays in LA, but who knows? We'll find out. Ked, any final thought on the game here today before we wrap up?
Congratulations, Shauna Green and her staff, Brad Underwood and your staff. It's a great day if you're an Illini basketball fan. 2 huge wins. I'm going to end it with that.
Yep. Folks, we really appreciate you being here. I always encourage people, go to IlliniGuys.com. Join for $99 a year. It's the same model we've had since we started in 2021. No increase in price or anything like that. You get all of the hints and all of the stuff that's back in the message boards that we can't publish as articles. There's a lot there with Ked and Brad and Matt. They hear an awful lot of things. So please go ahead and join that. Plus, you can find us at IlliniGuys.com, our YouTube page. And that's always a positive. You can go there and take a look. Oh, we got Ked with his, what, Ked, put your grandson back up. Put him back up on the, I didn't see you grab him. But we also have IlliniGuys.com YouTube page. There's Ked's grandson. Everybody say hello, Illini Nation. There he is. So that's awesome. Thanks, Ked. And we've got our Illini Guys YouTube channel, and you can obviously share our podcasts or the YouTube on social media. Anytime you can do that, we appreciate that so much. And we will be back, of course, with Eye on the Illini. We'll have our halftime live on Wednesday, and then we'll have our post-game show Wednesday night late. That's going to be a big one, and we're looking forward to playing Rutgers. That's been a tough place for the Illini over the last few years. Should be a heck of a game. Until then, folks, go Illini. And I should say we will have a quick word from our friends at Busey Bank.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
So thank you very much for Busey Bank, who does a lot of support for the Illini guys. We appreciate everything that they do. And folks, until Wednesday, go Illini.